Seeking the wise,
with Aaron and Alexander discussing the Just philosophy,
covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness.
Welcome to the Wise podcast. Here with me always and forever is Alexander.
Hello, beautiful people. So good to be here. It's good to be with Aaron and all you listeners.
Yes. Alexander and I, it's been a few weeks since we've caught up, so we decided to just jump right in and start sharing parts of our life that we've encountered some challenging times and times when we've had to call upon the Just philosophy and practice the concepts and perspectives and tools and techniques that we share on this podcast. And we'll just kind of break down, some of the things that we've encountered and the steps that we've taken. And hopefully there are some good lessons that you guys can derive from our experiences and apply to your lives out there.
Yeah, so first of all, this is going to be like example. I'm going to give a story that happened within the last week. And this is just an example of how to utilize the Just philosophy and the actual steps that I pretty much exactly went through, and to help you listeners to understand how the more that you practice this work, the faster you can get each step taken care of. Now, I've been practicing this stuff for over 26 years, and so I'm going to be talking about stuff that happens in a matter of minutes, but I don't want everyone to think that that's where they should be. In the beginning, this stuff might take me days of processing, multiple times to get to this point. So please don't measure where you're at in a comparative way. So what happened was I had a session with a wonderful lady this week, and she had 3 kids under 10 years old. Beautiful, magnificent kids, 2 boys and a girl, and the girl was the youngest, and she was about 4 years old. And so when they came to my studio, of course, I've got instruments all over the world, and so for a child, it's like literally a dream playground. So one of them was a generator, one of them was a projector, and one of them was a manifester. And then the mother was a manifesting generator in the human designs. So 3 kids with 3 different profiles is an amazing experience for these parents. And we don't know what the father is yet. But with that being said, the little manifester, the youngest one, the 4-year-old, she was the most intrigued, and she wanted to touch everything. She wanted to play with everything, and then she was ready to go to the next thing. She was resistive to, suggestions of boundaries. And of course, we were suggesting the kids to play outside, but they wanted to be inside with us. And so over a period of about an hour, the little girl was standing with one of my Peruvian whistles that's made out of clay, and she was standing over one of the crystal bowls and dropped the whistle. And I was talking to the mother at that time, and my glance didn't even change, because I knew there was a high probability that that bowl was broken. And the mother said out loud, "Did she just break that bowl?" And I just glanced over and I saw the shards underneath, and I said, "Yeah, she sure did." And the beautiful projector child, which is probably, I think he's around 8 years old, and I think the oldest is 10. So this like 7 to 8-year-old projector child right away goes into apologizing for his little sister. And it was so powerful because he, being the projector, was the most sensitive one in the room, and he was the most concerned about the repercussions. And the little manifester child, she didn't bat an eye. She didn't show any fear. She didn't show any concern. And right away, I was talking to the little boy, the little projector boy, and I said, "That's okay, brother. Accidents happen, and I know that she didn't mean to do that. So I don't want you to be worried about her getting in trouble or you getting in trouble. We're going to continue to have a good time. And And so we made some adjustments and then let them keep playing, and the lady and I finished our discussion. Now, when that happened, first of all, I wanted to point out the generator was sitting over the couch, being the observer, which is very common for the generator. Then the manifester that created the issue, it didn't phase her at all. She was ready to move on to the next thing very quickly. And then the projector child took it so personally and carried the most fear about the repercussions. And so it was just very interesting to watch that dynamic happen and those three children to play these roles so well. As I was talking to that little boy, I had what we experience as the would have, could have, should haves come in. And this is where doubt is created. That, I should have, or I would have, or I could have set stronger boundaries, or I could have put myself between the crystal bowls. All those thoughts just flood in for just a few minutes. And so for about 3 to 5 minutes, as I was continuing to engage, these were the things that were going on internally. So, see, this would be considered an emotional reaction in my language. See, people take and misunderstand sometimes when I talk about emotional reaction as an outward display. But I really want to talk about that in my language, an emotional reaction is when I sense a change in my energetic field. And so that happened for about, like I said, 3 to 5 minutes. And then we finished up the visit and took us about 15 minutes for them to leave. And then what I suggest is what I do. I had a break in my day at that time. So I went and sat in contemplation for about an hour. And in this stillness, what I want to do is I want to come up with 3 to 5 things that I will do next time anything similar happens again. So, see, no woulda, coulda, shouldas. We want to shift them to from this point on moving forward. This is how I'm going to be prepared to handle this next time.
Yeah, and you're bringing acceptance in, like, this happened, like, don't waste any energy in that, like you're saying, the would-have, could-haves, or should-haves are all resistance to reality. So that's
Well
all
said.
in non-acceptance. It's in resistance to the situation. But the situation happened, so we're just trying to help people understand, like, get to dealing with the situation as fast as possible. But there may be times where people can't, like, their mind won't let them.
Uh-huh.
And this is a process, right? So it's going to take time for people to reprogram their brains to get to that point because they've been trained to stay in that past and
Mhm.
dwell over that and try to figure out, what they did wrong and then scold themselves for not doing what they should have done, right?
Yes, yes, that's very common. And sometimes things like this happen at work or in different social situations. But I do want to emphasize that the sooner you can get to that stillness to process, the better. That's the sooner you can get to it, the more information that you have to work with. And so that's why in my day to day life, I do my best not to have my schedule slammed so that if anything does happen, I have the opportunity right away to work with processing this. And like I said, sometimes you don't do it all in one day. It used to take me days of being very intentional to go back to that experience, to rewind and play that experience over and over to get the most information about how to prevent this from happening again in this same manner. So I think that that's important and for people not to get discouraged because you may sit for some people have a problem sitting first of all. And so they may sit for 15 minutes and just get one thing and see many times if somebody gets one little insight, they think that they have learned and moved on. This is why I'm suggesting 3 to 5 adjustments so that you're prepared no matter what the situation is for the next time. And that's very important because all of this is about preparing for the next time, and acceptance, as Aaron brought in, is the first step of that. See, here we are in the 3 R's again: to recognize the person, place, or situation, to respect it, which is to accept and to stop judging it, and then to redirect it. And these 5 different 3 to 5 options is the redirection that I have next time a similar issue comes up. I'm prepared what to do.
When we're talking about getting to acceptance as fast as possible, I feel like some people are going to hear that and like think that they have to rush to it, or they may rush to it. They may jump ahead of where they actually are internally, and with the mind, because like with the
Mhm.
mind, we can think that we're past something when we're not. So, is there something that we could lose there if we do mentally jump ahead when the rest of our levels are kind of not there yet? As people work on this, they may find themselves doing that because they know mentally that they should be in acceptance, but the rest of the levels haven't caught up yet.
Yes, and the importance of the acceptance is so that you can actually gain useful information. See, when we're in resistance, we're not seeing things clearly. We're seeing them still in a preference. Acceptance helps to bring that in of I want to see this clearly so that I can make the best decisions moving forward. So as Aaron was saying, that may take multiple times coming back to that situation to review it. Because see, I want to warn people as well as what I said earlier that once you get one insight, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have solved that moving forward in your life. So this is the point of why I feel like it's important to have a daily practice of stillness where you already have time carved out to either meditate or contemplate. And contemplate is where you go over different scenarios and you're able to make adjustments. It's kind of like lucid dreaming. Meditation is no thoughts. There's no solving going on. So those are two different experiences, but very equally important in our processing. And so contemplation is actually a big part of coming up with alternative ways to approach that situation. So like the very first one that came to me that day was the reason this got set up is it's actually a lady that has bought one of my sound lounges in her place of business. And when we were talking, she said, I really want my kids to meet you. You're just different than most anybody I've ever met before. And I said, wonderful, let's do that. And so she said, I'll set an appointment. Well, when she set the appointment, the grandmother was supposed to be coming to help manage the children while we were doing our sessions. But for whatever reason, and I wasn't informed, the grandmother couldn't come. So we had to adapt. And so we did, and we did a good job of that. But with that being said, see, the very first thing that I saw in that was the next time I will suggest that I go to their house where the children are in their own environment, where they're not as distracted by all the new crazy instruments that's around. So see, this wasn't the children's fault. There was no need to be upset at any of the children. And so, and that's another thing about emotional processing is to see if you're still viewing something external, you're not in the processing part. The true processing is when you take full responsibility of what emotion just got activated. And so, see, I could have stopped there and just said, well, moving forward, I'll just go to people's houses when they want me to meet their children, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't stop there. That happened before she even left. I got that so-called download. But see, I wanted more. So I took an hour to sit in contemplation and meditation to process more. So the next thing that I got was that we could have gone outside, but see, it was a little cool and I had the thin shirt on. All I had to do was go and get a jacket and sit outside, and the children would have been outside. I could have brought some instruments out there. And I wanted that second option to what if somebody just shows up and they have to have their kids with them like she did that day. I still want to be prepared for that rather than going, oh, we can't do the session because I need to come to your house if kids are involved. So see, this is the purpose of having multiple options that come up. And so that processing and those steps are very important to dissolve that emotional reaction of frustration is probably what I would label that happened when that happened. The emotion that popped up was frustration. That's the woulda, coulda, shouldas, manage this differently, blah, blah, blah. And to know moving forward, this is the way that we're going to approach it. So again, if somebody sits for a period of time and they get one insight, my challenge or my suggestion is then just the next day or sometime later in the day, sit with it and do your best to come up with another option. And like I said, the goal is 3 to 5 options of how you would handle that moving forward. And see, that brings a confidence in, it brings a comfort. It's not having to go and tell other people to adjust because remember, people, it's not the smartest that will survive, it's not the strongest will survive, it's the one that can adapt. So that's why everyone that's listening to this, I'm putting the most responsibility on your shoulders to be the one to make the adaptation. And so there's nothing that I need the children or that lady to do because I've come up with the ways that I need to adapt so that that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I think with many people out there hearing this story and them reflecting on it with experiences in their life or putting themselves in your shoes, I think a common thing would be feeling frustration towards that woman for not informing you that she was bringing her children and there was nobody there to watch them when you were doing that. And while that feeling is, I don't want to say like it's like justified, like there's a reason why that feeling comes in because there could have been communication. But when you're doing this conscious work, you have to be the conscious one and you have to adapt. And it's all about what you can do in that situation. And I can feel many people going to a black and white thinking, even after this, if they were in your shoes and this happened to them, where they might resort to, well, that's it. I'm never seeing anybody with children again, you
Sure.
know? And that's, you're losing a lot in that because that's that black and white. It's inflexible. It's not adapting. It's reacting versus responding because you're having an emotional reaction. You're feeling that feeling come in, and then you're just reacting to that resistance instead of sitting with that resistance and figuring out just like, I mean, you could bring in creativity with how to solve these things. So it's a win-win for both people. So you can
Mhm.
still see people with children and still feel comfortable in your environment. Yeah, there's a lot of creativity that you can bring in here versus just reacting and saying, "Well, that's it. My lesson was I shouldn't ever do this again." Because I feel like
Right.
many people reduce lessons in their emotional reaction versus getting neutral first
Yes.
before trying to find them.
The next thing people have, the few people that I've shared this with, first question they've asked me, well, is she going to pay for it? So see, that's the next thing is that like we didn't discuss that when she left, because that wasn't what that day was about. It was about her coming for a session and us managing her kids as well as we did. So see, I'm going to present to her and give her the opportunity to pay for that replacement. Um, I don't feel that she will have any resistance to that. But see, the key is that I want to be neutral and non-affected of whether she agrees to pay for it or she doesn't agree to pay for it. The point is that I learned lessons, lessons plural. That's worth something. I fortunately can replace that without it being devastating to my bank account. And sometimes we need to pay monetarily for the lesson because listen, people, many times when you don't have anything invested, you don't take anything from it. And so this is the point of learning to live in non-preference is that, see, I don't want to communicate that with her. I haven't yet, mainly because of logistics, but I wouldn't want to contact her if I was upset or I was going to be upset if she wasn't going to pay that. Because how is that going to help me? It's going to negatively affect me. So in the communication, see, I want to be neutral and I want to be accepting of no matter what she decides to do, because this is about standing in your power, people. Is this is how people give their power away all the time is that their reactions or their responses is determined by other people's reactions. So before you engage, get to a place of neutrality, and then I'll be communicating that within the next day or two. And I'm going to be loving and receptive no matter what the response is. And I think that's another important part of this.
Yeah, this reminds me of an episode we did very early on, first year. I had my nieces and nephews coming over my house, and they were like between ages 2 and 6. And I had a fear of them, coming in and just breaking everything because, I don't have children. So my house isn't childproof. And so we had a discussion about this, and hopefully I can remember to put the episode in the show notes so people could go back to this one. But we discussed that if I had a fear of that, then I should proactively find anything of value that I don't want to break prior to them coming over and putting it away, because I'm already getting that message. I'm already getting, okay, this is going to cause resistance in me if it happens. Uh, so on some level, I'm attracting it because I'm telling the universe that this is a lesson I need to learn because I have resistance here, right?
Mhm.
And then if I don't take action, then, there's a lesson waiting there for me. And part of that is a sign, like, even though it could be based on fear, you're getting that hit to, oh, I was thinking about the things that could break, and, like, some would say that that's a sign that, that I'm being alerted to, take action on that.
Yeah, and this, we've done uh, podcasts on signs and how different people read signs different ways. So again, I'm not here to say what the way to read signs is, but when we work with them consistently, they reveal more. And so sometimes, like you said earlier, that some people would have the reaction of, "That's it, I'm just not having kids or working with anybody with kids anymore." So see that to me as an extreme boundary. It still may be useful. It may be a useful step for that person, and then they may later on adjust that. I didn't see a need for anything that drastic because I'm looking at things on a very subtle, the most subtle level that I possibly can to make the adjustment myself. And so, uh, and this is just a practice in being attached to material objects. That was one of my suggestions is, yeah, moving forward with you in that situation. If kids are coming, then yeah, anything that's special or you really don't want to get broken, then, put away. And see, I knew that with them coming in here, I wasn't aware that something like I wasn't not aware that something couldn't happen. I was aware of that, but I wanted the children to feel like children rather than being so disciplined. And so, like I said, the second thing that I saw was that it could be my responsibility to move the unit of the people to the outdoor area and then bring a few toys or sound instruments that they can play with that aren't that valuable or important, and still could have had the same experience without the cost, so to say. So this just gets down to people seeing the beauty in practicing adaptation over and over and over. It's not you catering to people. See, that's what some people misunderstand. It's all of this is for you so that you learn to step out of that negative emotion or that negative emotional charge that hits you as soon as possible rather than letting it brood over for hours or for days. This is where we're talking about the free will that we were given to make the adjustment internally. We were given that free will of perception. And when we change our perception of something, it changes the energy of it, which changes the emotional reaction, which changes the physical connection to it. So, so again, this is not being walked over, but actually standing in your power in an ultimate way.
So within your practice, because you mentioned that once it happened and you started having like the woulda, couldas, or shouldas like flood in, um, for somebody else experiencing that, that would be progress as far as working on uh, their emotional reactions, working on not having one in the moment, being or coming into acceptance pretty fast. Would you say that you failed in your practice, experiencing those feelings come in immediately once it happened?
Not at all. This is the human experience, and the art or the technique of all of this is how quickly you can get out of that just initial. Some people call this the shadow parts of ourselves. Some people call it emotional reactions. It's got many different labels, but see, in my view, these aren't things to shut out or to shut down because that's detachment people. And that is one way that people stop being reactive, but they detach and they don't have any deep connections to people on much of any level. And so that's where a lot of our culture is in. And this is again why in the five levels practice, it's a practice to cry or emote almost every single day. Because, see, I want to be in my feelings. I want to be able to feel love. I want to be able to feel connection. I want to feel intimacy. And when you detach, you can't feel those things. So, see, if you're practicing being connected to this life and to people, those reactions are part of this life. And I still want to be in touch with them, like Rumi suggests. Oh, jealousy, there you are, my friend. Come in. I haven't seen you in a long time. Let's dine together. See, the greats didn't talk about detaching. It's a management thing. So, so see, those emotions aren't anything negative. I want to feel them because I may need them if something drastic is happening and I need to make an adjustment very quickly. That's what they're there for. So these negative emotions shouldn't be seen as something bad. And that's why I don't care for the term negative, only from the view of polarity that you got to have a positive charge and a negative charge in this earthly experience. But see, both are necessary. And we akin that to a battery in a car. The negative terminal isn't bad and the positive terminal is good. They're both necessary to crank the car. And so that's the way that I look at this is that in order to still be fully in this life experience and not detached, then you're going to feel those. Some people call them triggers. So, see, it can be called shadow self, it can be parts, it can be called triggers, emotional reactions. But the key is how quickly you can make the adjustment. And the just philosophy is the process to make those adjustments. And the more that you learn from the situation, see, the less charged you're going to be when it happens moving forward in the future. So, see, this isn't getting rid of those emotional experiences. It's just learning to manage them like a child. So, when a child throws a temper tantrum, how that is managed determines on how that child handles the next temper tantrum, and how that's managed determines how it handles it the next time. And so this is why it doesn't do any good for a parent to yell at a child when they're going through a temper tantrum. That is not going to help the situation. But communicating and really finding out what's going on with the kid and then working to avoid that moving forward could be useful. And the very first step of that is not to judge the kid, to be loving, to be connected to him instead of being angry or being frustrated or blah, blah, blah. But see, if that happens, just go put yourself in timeout, like we suggest to our children, until you get back centered before you go and engage with that child. And so that's an optimal way. But if you're in a public situation, then it needs to be managed a little bit of a different way. But remember, all these practices that you get a chance to every day to practice it, anytime that emotion comes in. See, the very first step is to recognize, to be able to catch that you're in that emotion. That's the first step. But lots of people just stop there with being aware of it. And you've got to, from the Just Philosophy's view, the next step is to learn to not judge it, to get to a place of back into a loving vibration. And that's the respect. And then simply if this happens or when this happens in the future, I'm going to do this, 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 or this. That's the redirect. So the 3 R's is a very deep process that I feel like people are still just scratching the surface of getting in contact with.
Very good. Yeah. So the point of doing this work isn't to make you into a drone, um, because I mean, theoretically, you could have sat there and not felt anything and just turned back and then just kept going. But I think the point is that the more work that you've done on yourself, you've lessened that that feeling inside, which is the reaction to the experience. Because somebody who may not be as well versed as you in this may have been in your place, had that happen, and may like inside they may have been screaming because their stuff was broken. They have a resistance to that. And then because they didn't, they're not well versed in responding versus reacting, then
Mhm.
they could have had to get up and stop the session and deal with the situation right then and there in a very over dramatic way in some instances
Yeah,
because that work uh,
it is a
to
process.
that work of managing
Yeah.
isn't there.
Yeah, because that first step is just, some people can't not react externally.
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
might yell at the child or yell at the parent. So yeah, that first step is just not to react externally. But it don't end there because and if you learn to catch it and not react externally, see you still need to go release that energy. If it's created, it needs to be released. So this is why with anger and frustration, I talk about physical exercise, some type of way to actually burn energy off. If it's sadness or these different emotions, they all have a different process, and we've covered most of them. But please give us your questions if you would like, to how to manage a specific emotion. But we're going to stay on track with this one with frustration slash anger. But see, I've been practicing long enough that I didn't have to get away from the situation. But if you do, then do that. There's no judgment with that because I could have said, could you please give me 5 minutes? I just need to go ground or go outside, and I've got a path here that I could have walked and come back. Because the main thing is engage as little as possible until you're able to get back to that neutral, but communicate what you need. Hey, can you please give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is? And again, this is on a beautiful day, so I wouldn't have been restricting anybody. But whatever you need, first of all, to not do that external reaction. And then when you recognize that it's going on internal and you have to manage it like at a work situation or something like that, then again, as soon as possible, get to your car or private place to where you can release that. And I like to suggest to release it when you release it by yourself the way that it almost came out as that reaction. Because if it's created in the mind like that, then it's a healthy exercise to release it. This is why yelling in pillows, punching pillows, jumping on the bed, it can be very useful, like for that, to just get it out. And then sometimes that can help the person to get back to that centered or that non preference place to receive the information. And so when you sit in that stillness, see, you want to ask the question out loud, even, what can I do next time to avoid this same situation from happening? And then just sit in stillness and see if things don't start to come in. Again, if your mind's too busy, it may not be able to get in. So this may mean that you want to set a time the following day or later that day that, hey, I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to keep visiting it until I get information about what adjustment that I can make next time. But those are key steps, especially in the beginning when starting to learn to process these emotions. And we want to emphasize that it is a process. And the more you practice it on a daily basis, the quicker you can move through the process.
It's funny because like the way we're talking about managing emotions is like you're in charge of when and where that energy gets released.
Like a
That's
child.
yeah, that's the thing. And when you're not managing your emotions, it's in charge of you
Yes.
of how it comes out.
Yes, in that comparison, that if you take it, a 5-year-old child, if the parent takes that 5-year-old child, and that's what I relate emotions to, about the intelligence of a 5 to maybe 7-year-old. And some people that are just completely outwardly reactive, see, it's not a judgment, but they're even younger. They're at like a 2 or 3-year-old emotional, um, level, so to say. And again, this isn't a judgment, it's an assessment. So you know that you're working towards being that parent, because if that parent takes that 5-year-old child out into public, see, the child's not responsible for its actions, the parent is. So many times I suggest to parents that have challenging children, which I question if that term really is real. Most of the time, the children are the result of their environment. And when you take a very hyper um, maybe intuitive or excitable type of child into a very controlled environment. I'm just suggesting to people reconsider doing that, especially at certain ages. That that there the less that we can restrict our children, see, the more creative that they're going to be. But at certain ages, we can be guilty in our country to control the children too much, telling them to be quiet, to be still, those types of things. And see, I didn't want any of that to come across to these children in this example because they were just being kids. And so I think that just as it's the parent's responsibility when they take the child out into the world, it's the parent's responsibility to manage all the emotional children that pop up. And I hope that comparison, or that analogy rather, is helpful to people, because that's all these emotions are, is like untamed children, wild children that when they are talked to, just like when we optimally talk to a 5-year-old and we explain the situation, then they can learn how to respond to that environment better. And that's what I'm suggesting to do to these emotions, not to just shut them down. Just like we don't want to put that 5-year-old, if they do something bad in public, or maybe they shouldn't, we don't want to just close them up in a room for the rest of the day, or for days or something like that. So it's the same with emotions. We don't want to just shut them down. We don't want to close them off. We want to be connected to them, but we can manage them if you see that, again, emotions are a choice. And understand that if people are hearing that for the first time, may have some very reactive comments to that. But when you truly understand and see that, it's an empowering thing to experience. And of course, there's a difference between somebody in the human design that have the emotions activated, which I do, which means it's a 24/7 days a week, 24 hours a day roller coaster. And then it's different for people that have that non-activated. And I think, Aaron, is yours
Yeah,
non-activated?
mine's open.
Yeah. So see, Aaron and I are affected differently in this world by our emotions and by our surroundings. But again, this has different. The other characteristic of that is how emotionally connected a person is, and how they're comfortable processing, or how detached that they are.
All right. Well, my experience isn't as juicy as yours. It's not as fruitful, but um, I'm going to try to move through my story as fast as possible so we can get to the good stuff. But it did affect me because of just the reflection that I had on my past self, because I could see
Mhm.
a lot of myself in this situation. But of course, this deals with bowling because that seems to be where I'm getting
Yeah.
all my lessons from these days. But I'm president of my Tuesday league, so I have to deal with issues that come up with people. And I have a buddy uh, who is a very passionate person. He's new to the adult leagues. I think he's probably early 20s. Very passionate. So when he bowls, he just like outwardly expresses his
Mhm.
joy or frustration, no matter what it is, in a very loud way. And
Mhm.
so everybody knows what's going on with him, whether he throws a good shot or not. I will hand it to him. He has made some progress where when he gets upset, he does walk away from everybody into a room. And I don't know what he does in that room. I don't know if he yells or punches a pillow or something in there, but he has started to express his so-called negative emotions outside of everyone
And is
instead
that,
of throwing stuff or hitting something.
I apologize for cutting in, but is that from a suggestion by somebody, or has
I
he
don't
done that himself?
I don't know the answer to that, to be
Yeah.
honest. I have hinted a few things to him, but I don't think it's clicked yet. I think after this most recent situation, he may be more open to some suggestions, but that I feel like he loves to be in that. He loves to feel emotions. He loves
Mhm.
to experience those highs. I don't know if I'm still. I don't know. Like some people are addicted to the lows too. You know,
Mhm.
they love that roller coaster. And I used to be like that. Sports used to do this to me, being a Red Sox fan, having to go through, part of that end of that 86 years of
Mhm.
frustration of not winning the World Series. When I was a child, I was born into feeling those ups and downs. And again, like we've talked about, I would be affected for a week, just
Right.
if my football team lost on a Sunday, it would affect how I treated everybody. And and then I decided, like, I don't like that feeling. I think to the people who aren't aware that you have a choice, you kind of just feel like, "Oh, well, I'm a fan, so this is what comes with it."
Mhm.
And there is a different way, and that's what clicked for me is I don't need to experience this. I could still like, the team, but not have to feel everything that they go through because I don't like feeling the lows most importantly, and
Mhm.
that comes with feeling the highs. So just that acceptance of understanding. But anyway, back to the story. So his team has like 5 dominant, like 200 average plus guys on the team, and with this being his first adult league, he's coming in with expectations that he's going to dominate. He's made some bets with people that he was going to average like 230, and like
Mm.
that's never been done in this alley. And so he's just coming in from college, bowling in college, and coming in and just having these unrealistic expectations. It was a lot of fun to watch, and
Right.
we joke around with him a lot about it. But I have to give it to him. Like he has a lot of confidence. Like he believes in himself a lot, and I think that comes with the cost,
Mhm.
of reality and the downs of that. But his team was dominant for this first quarter, but right at the end they started kind of falling apart. And this past Tuesday was our the end of the quarter, so we have, like, a roll-off where the teams are ranked into how many points they've won, and then the first goes against second, third goes against fourth, and then, we determine a winner at the end of that, and his team had fallen out of first to third, but they're only down 1 game from first, so it was really close.
Mhm.
And my buddy, he live streams all these videos, so they're always on Facebook. And something was caught last week where somebody they were bowling against is a right-handed bowler, but they had bowled 2 balls left-handed in one of the games because they're about to get surgery on their right hand, and they were just kinda seeing if they could do it
Mhm.
left-handed, seeing if that was feasible or if they would have to take some time off. And there is a rule where you can't switch hands because in bowling, your average is attached to your hand.
Mm.
So if you switch lefty, you have to establish a whole new average left-handed. And this is to prevent people from sandbagging in a way where they can just switch to the left hand to get a lower average and then start bowling with their right, the rest of the league.
Mhm.
So there are rules around that, and you have to get permission to establish a new average with a new arm. And this person didn't know. I'm pretty sure they're new. This is their first league that they're in as well. But one of my buddy's teammates had told him that they saw this happen and that it should invalidate their scores or cause them to forfeit.
Mhm.
And that would then benefit them because they had lost 5 points out of 7 last week. And so that would put them in first by 4,
Mhm.
theoretically. And so he brought it up to me as soon as I walked in on Tuesday, and it was like all this drama coming at me, like, "Oh, what's the rule on this? What's the rule on this? Well, this person did this," and I'm like, "Okay, well, where's your evidence? And let me see what you're reading about the rule," because I wasn't up to date on what the repercussions of doing that was. And to be honest, I looked at the rule book and it's not clear. It doesn't
Mhm.
say what the punishment is. It doesn't say that you forfeit the entire night because you threw 1 ball lefty.
Right.
And it doesn't say it's just that game. I think it's supposed to be up to what makes sense in the league. So luckily, the president of our association was there on Tuesday as well, so we were able to gain his insight as well. But really, what we had to do was get all the team captains and the other ranking members of the league to come in and discuss it. And so my buddy was there, and he was very black and white thinking, like, this happened, so this should happen. And
Mhm.
clearly, we all know that he was just doing it for his own team benefit. It
Right.
didn't it didn't have to do with the rule, really. He was just utilizing the rule to get his team further in place to win the quarter.
Right.
And everybody saw through that. And it was a very extreme take because he was willing to cause division within the entire league just to win more,
Mhm.
just to win that quarter. And and the thing is, he works at the bowling alley too. So it's not just he's just bowling here and that's it. And he has like no relationship to the people, who own the place, to the other people who are bowling here. This is a community thing,
Mhm.
and we're trying to rebuild the community within the alley because it's under new ownership, and it had previously been energetically kind of left for dead in a way where a lot of people stopped coming. So we're trying to add energy into it and rebuild it, and this would be very divisive for that if that happened because there would be a lot of unhappy people that just because somebody threw 2 balls left hand and one was a gutter and one was 4, so it didn't help that person's team at all. It was actually
Right.
detrimental. And we all knew and understood that the rule says that you can't do that.
Mhm.
So we all had to use discernment and what's best for everyone and what's fair for everyone and how we handled, this situation. Of course, my buddy was very adamant that it should be black and white. The rule was broke, so this should happen.
Mhm.
And unfortunately in life, like things aren't always that clear. There's always variables involved. It's never if then else in code language. Like if that person bowled the whole game, then yeah, like that's different from bowling 2 balls.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of variables that had to be taken account and we had to tap into our humanness and what's best for everyone. And ultimately, we all decided unanimously to let it be because no harm was done. It was not malicious, and it actually didn't benefit them.
Mhm.
And we're not going to tear apart the entire league just because somebody threw 2 balls and they didn't know. But
Yeah.
like going forward, everybody knows that this isn't allowed now, and
Mhm.
that's kind of how we took it. And of course, my friend, he has other ways to take it up the ladder. And I did actually talk with somebody else who works at the association um, above our league, and she said that he could do that, but they may just laugh at him because I was curious as to are they going to read the rule and be like he was, where it's like
Mhm.
black and white, or are they going to use some like common sense and reasoning in it? And I think she believed that they would use some reasoning because there isn't like an actual if this happens, then this absolutely happens. So it is left up to the league, and I don't foresee like anybody higher up overturning what everybody in the league wants to do. It's very similar to how government is structured where you have like the local government for the
Mhm.
people and then higher ups. There's other like rules and laws that govern the structure of the game, but the nuances are handled at the local level. So now, so he wasn't happy about it. They still had a chance to win, and
Mhm.
to be honest, they did what they had to do. They won all their games, but one team above them won all the games, so they still finished second. So they didn't end up winning.
Right.
Um, but I did send him a message after the night because I had somebody tell me that somebody on his team isn't paid up. And if a person on your team is 2 or more weeks behind in paying, as a rule on our sheet, technically you can forfeit all the games if you have somebody who's, far behind in paying
Mhm.
their weekly dues. And so that's a rule that I remember a couple weeks ago when I saw that rule. I asked Brenda, who's our secretary, I asked her, I was like, would we actually enforce this? Because this seems very extreme. Like I wouldn't want to. I would just ask them to, pay. And
Mhm.
if they couldn't, then we would look into it. But it was a rule. And so obviously you would use discernment in that rule because you're not just gonna like, oh, you're 2 weeks behind. Guess like your team just like nobody would come bowling anymore
Right.
because you would all these people would because people sometimes the way their pay is and some people get paid monthly. It
Mhm.
varies. So the common sense approach is that you would talk to them first to find out the situation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the most conscious thing. So I just I sent him a voice message and I was just like, you really have to be careful when you're looking at black and white thinking and using like very nuanced rules to try to enforce something because your house may not be as tidy as you think it is. And
Mhm.
I just said, "Y- I don't know if this is true, but you may have somebody on your team that is behind in payments. And technically, according to the rules, you would have to forfeit all those games. So
Mhm.
and of course, we're not going to do that, because that
Right.
doesn't make sense. That wouldn't benefit anybody. So I just used it as a lesson for me, first of all, because I see a lot of myself, my former self in him and
Right.
how emotional he is and how to the rules he is,
Yep.
to the absolute point, because I used to be like that. And then I've grown into, having a lot of compassion and understanding of the variables and what makes sense from a reason standpoint versus a, black and white rule, hard boundary standpoint. And so I kind of, in a light way, passed along a little tidbit of insight with him and just said, pretty much we're all kind of breaking rules every day.
Mhm.
If you drive 1 mile per hour over the speed limit, technically you're breaking a rule and you
Right.
could be pulled over. Now, if you got pulled over, you wouldn't be happy and you would be trying to justify, well, I was going down a hill. Should I ride my brakes down the hill? So we're
Mhm.
all breaking rules. And if we were in a situation where somebody was trying to hold us to that, we would ask for a little bit of flexibility and and
Mhm.
and just understanding the variables. I think it's just common sense. So that's kind of what I took from all of this, and I'm interested in hearing, what your input is.
Yeah, I think it's a great exercise basically from focusing on external competition to internal competition. Because see, when we take that external competition, that's win at all costs. And there's a lot of people out there that that's the way they live their lives and they stay in a lot of friction. But when you take the competition inside and you're looking at how can I manage everything to not go through all this roller coaster ride of emotions? That's when you're looking at variables and you're being a little bit more human, compassionate, like that kind of thing. So this is where it gets tricky in sports because sports is technically most people want to draw that line of black and white. These are the rules and you either win or lose by the rules. And so I think it gives you a wonderful opportunity to see, how the majority of the energy of the people that you play with is. Are they more external competitive or are they looking at these variables? That was one reason that I stopped playing basketball weekly with a group I played up into my 30s every week was because of younger and younger people kept coming in and they were so driven and so competitive that they would rather if somebody got hurt on the other team for them to win, then that's just the way that it was, and I was at a point in my life where, no, me winning and somebody getting hurt, that nobody wins with that. So I actually made the decision to stop participating in that rather than trying to control the people that were coming in. Um, so, any social situation like this is just a great experiment and an experience, like you're saying. And I can see you in that buddy of yours that you're talking about. And I remember, over 7 years ago when we met, you were in a whole lot more of that type of energy. And it does testify to your growth. But the most beautiful thing of this is always anytime we see parts of ourselves in somebody else, to just have that interest and that drive internally. That's that internal competition to say, I'm doing a lot better, but where can I do better? And to actually use that reflection, because see, sometimes people say, well, I'm not like that anymore. And I say, well, if you look close enough, you'll find somewhere in your life that you probably are still like that. And so this is what going through these types of experiences, you've planted some seeds to potentially be useful to this person down the road. And then you have the opportunity to continue to go deeper into yourself and say, yeah, what are areas where I'm still seeing things black and white? And that's the language that I like to say that never ends. And if we get away from looking at fixing ourselves and that this is just a process, and I'm going to continue to get better and better, seeing less things black and white, less things black and white, and more importance on these variables. That's what I feel like this human experience and being around others is very much about.
Yeah, I think the black and white thing is on my radar, because it's something that I've been noticing in just the political climate. It's hard to not see it if you're
Mhm.
on, like, Facebook or something. Everybody is giving their opinion, and, like, the people I work with, all share their opinions in our chat, which I don't really like, but so I can't avoid it, but it is like, it does bring up frustration in me, and
Mhm.
so I know that, like, I made a lot of
Useful.
progress in that, but now I'm seeing that it's still there, and it's not as bad as it used to be, but it is still there, and it's again, it's my frustration and the lack of variables that people can't see, like, they're just stuck in seeing what they wanna see, and the hardest part is the hypocriticalness of people where they
Mhm.
defend one thing, but when their side does it, then it's good.
Right.
And it's hard because, like, I'm very aware of the things that I talk about, and I'm always checking in with myself to see if, like, if I've seen this in a different way before to utilize it, just like we're
Mhm.
talking about with the bowling.
Yeah.
I'm noticing my friend, having that black and white, um, mindset, and so it is showing me that because I, used to have that or I still have it somewhere
Mhm.
else. Because if I didn't have resistance to it, then I would be fine. Like,
Right.
I wouldn't need to have that reminder.
And this is another great example of you've got the spleen activated in the human design as well, right? And so, see,
Yeah.
the external is meant to be your mirror. So that's why to stay that investigator to go, okay, yes, I'm a lot better, and I can recognize that I've come a long way, but there's still more to do. And that's the beauty of people with that spleen activated in the human design is that
So,
everybody's a mirror.
with you not having the spleen activated, how is it different from that? And could these people who I notice who can't reflect back from external circumstances, could they just not have their spleen activated and maybe
Yeah,
that's why it's
I mean,
it's different?
and I don't have my spleen activated. Of course, I've worked with discipline and structure to utilize external things for that reflection, but that's been more of something that I've had to focus on to develop to where people with a spleen activated, such as yourself, you have to learn to focus on it, but we focus on it in a different way to utilize it as development. Because white spleen people are designed to be more externally intuitive, and it is more about what they are seeing and the people that's involved in it, to where it's more of a reflection for people that are uh, have the spleen activated. And see, I see the usefulness in that. So I've just taken that on as part as my technique is that I want to see the situation for what it is, but I also want to gain any information as a reflection that it can have for usefulness for me. That's making the most out of every
Yeah.
external situation.
Yeah, I think I'll take that, and, that will help him with acceptance of some people, because they may not be able to gain that reflection, instantly. Like, it may,
Yeah.
like you're saying, it may be something they have to work on, and if it's not a priority for them, then they're not gonna work on it.
Well
They may
said.
not even be aware that the external,
Yeah, see that first
reflects it.
that want or that desire has to be there, because normally we do have to create some type of structure and some type of discipline to overcome something or to create something new, pattern wise. So I'd love to expand on that, maybe in our next episode if we can pick up where we're leaving off here. But we've got a pretty full episode, and
Yeah.
it's been wonderful sharing these two stories and the way we both worked with them and utilized them. And so great job. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody listening. Um, check us out. Check out Alexander on his website, thejustphilosophy.com, where he has some great stuff. Get a session from him. If you don't have your human design, we talked about some of our human design, our individual charts. But if you are interested in knowing what yours is, reach out to Alexander at thejustphilosophy.com. We'll
Beautiful.
see you on the next episode. Appreciate you all.
Blessings.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just Philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise whys.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.